Hello, everyone. It's Jason Fierno here representing the Mining Misfits, formerly known as the Mining Mavericks, and maybe Dave and I will get into that a little bit. But the Mining Misfits are a curated group of industry leaders who are passionate about making the industry better and more sustainable for everyone. Today, I'm really excited to have Mr. Dave Hansman of Redpath. Dave, welcome.
Good to see you, Jason.
Yeah, you too. Dave, if I understand correctly, earlier this month, you came up on 45 years working for Redpath over 50 different and have traveled to over 50 different countries. Is that right? Is that accurate?
It has been an interesting ride. When I left mining school back in the mid 70s, they had told us that it's likely that you're going to be changing employers in the mining industry every 5 years. And that's sort of what I went into this. I worked for Noranda Mines for about a year and a half. And then through a series of coincidences, I ended up getting offered a job at Redpath, who at the time I knew nothing about really. Thinking, well, it should be interesting for a few years. Well, I didn't realize it would turn into 45 years and ongoing. But the magic about working for a mining construction company like Redpath is that you in effect do change your careers or have an opportunity to change your career path all along the way. And ever since the get-go, it's been like that. Working in the engineering group, working in the estimating and business development, working in field operations. I spent 5 years in Chile in 2 separate stints. Lots of time in the USA and Australia and Africa and now what. It's just lots of different things to keep one interested, and it also I have to say I had a lot of good mentors along the way to help keep it interesting.
Yeah, and I really love that. Thank you for sharing that aspect of it with me and with us, because I think one of the things that I'd really like to chat about, and I know that you have a lot of ideas and passion about, is why somebody would want to work in the mining industry. And we'll jump into that in a second. But one of the things that as Misfits we've talked about is new generation of leadership and what we do to transfer knowledge. And what we landed on was that, for the group of us that were kind of 35 to 45, we had all had the opportunity to excel at our careers because we had such good mentors and because we had people that saw something in us, took us under their wings, and really developed us. So it sounds like you had you've had similar experiences. He froze.
I can go right back to high school. When I was leaving high school, the final year, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. I was looking around. I didn't have mining as a background, none whatsoever. I knew nothing about it, but I had been researching it, and I came across mining. And I thought, well, I looked at the courses that were available, and I looked at the Haileybury School of Mines, which wasn't that far away from where my hometown was, and it just seemed interesting. And I have to credit, I had a high school teacher named Glenn Medill, and he encouraged me to do it. And he wasn't in mining. He'd never been in mining, but he just encouraged me because it was different. And I was the only one in sort of that year of high school that went into mining from the school I was at. And it was a great mistake because it's worked out fantastically. And yes, when my first job with Noranda, I had a memorable guy named Jim Cahoon who I still stay in touch with. He's well into his 80s, and he, he encouraged me I was working as a surveyor in the engineering department doing mine planning and which is a great way for people to learn mining. And then when I came to Redpath, the door would just because guys like Jim Redpath, who should be in the Mining Hall of Fame for what he's contributed, he took me under his wing, and he tried to convey as much of his philosophies in contracting and mining, and other guys like Alex Spears, who recently was a CAM, was awarded and recognized by the CAM for distinguished service in mining. He also was one of the guys that made sure that I could write good letters. I could that we put together professional proposals that when we met people, we treated them like real people, and because he had and still has a great people skill, which I hope I learned from. And so it goes on and on. Morris Med he was our third president of Redpath. He became a miner out of high school and worked in salt mines and then into shafts and became one of the world's premier shaft sinking guys. You learn from them, and that's really the message I have for young people coming up. Is mentors are important, but you don't necessarily have to have any one particular mentor. I looked at everybody I ever ran into. It doesn't matter whether it was joint venture partners. We had people that were working in my department. I may have been their boss, but there's things to learn from the people who work under you. There's people in other departments who can help you learn things, and you can't be afraid to ask questions. And that's there's no such thing as a dumb question if you've actually given some thought beforehand, to it and try to figure it out, and then get advice. So yeah, it's that's an important part. And I always feel that I took the maximum advantage of it, or at least I tried. The president of our company after Jim Redpath, was a guy named Bob Brown. He once told me, he says, "Dave, I know how you do it." He says, you're soaking it up by osmosis, and he had a point. You don't have to physically do everything. Although I did work underground and on projects and all that, but you don't have to do everything to get an understanding of what you need to manage it, and most importantly, to be able to schedule it and estimate it and put a good working contract together on it. So that's where I come from.
I love that, and I really can resonate with that. It makes me think of two mentors that were really influential for me in my career. One was Bill Mccarthy, and Bill is a contracts guy, and he used to smack me on my grammar all of the time, because I'd get my pronouns off and stuff like that. So when I first started working for him, he would correct me mid-sentence, and it was like, oh, okay, well, he's right. So might as well, get better. So I learned better grammar and better writing as a result of his mentorship. And I really appreciate his attention to detail on that. The other thing you said that really resonated with me is what another mentor of mine, Mike Da Silva, taught me, which is learning through osmosis. I used to carry Mike's bags figuratively to negotiations and just watch how he would interact with contractors and with folks on the owner's team. And I didn't have to say anything, but I was just soaking it in. So you're absolutely right. You don't have to be the one, writing or speaking or typing, but just listening with an open mind and soaking it in through osmosis. So I love that concept. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Well, there's another little funny story I'll share, because I've tried to maybe to a fault, I've always thought the best of people, and so I watch very carefully to see what I can learn from them, because everybody's got something to contribute. But there are two people in my career that I ran into who I remember in a totally different way. I still remember the names, but I won't remember it. But this is what I've done. When I open up the cupboard where I keep my coat, when I come to the office, when I open up the cupboard, there's two plastic snakes that look at me. All right.
What? All right.
And the reason why I keep those plastic snakes there is to remind myself constantly that I never want to do to people what those guys did to people. And it's just my constant. I laugh about it. I think about it every time I look at those two plastic snakes in my coat cupboard. I think about those two people, and I reaffirm my mind that I'm never going to do the kind of things that those guys did. So so you can learn in various ways.
Well, same thing a mentor taught me is that as you witness things, you might learn exactly what you don't want to do. So we would sit in these meetings and it would be total chaos and it was disorganized and nothing really went as planned. And my mentor would say, well, now look, Jason, now you know what not to do. Don't do that. It's like, okay, well, that's really good. But snakes is a more extreme way to emphasize that lesson, I think. Whatever works, man. I'm not judging.
Just a physical. The way it happened was somebody had played a joke on someone with these plastic snakes, and I just kept two of them because it sunk in. I don't know what I can do with these.
Whatever works. I've got a sign. I've got a sign when I leave my office that says "Be a good person," and that's enough for me to just remind yourself not to be a jerk. But anyway, sorry, you were going to say something.
It's one of the, when I think back to the early part of my career, one of the thrilling things that I had a chance to do was work as Jim Redpath's personal technical assistant for about a year and a half. And what that meant was when he had a brainwave, somebody had to sit there and figure out if the brainwave made any sense. And he had a lot of brainwaves. And so it was good. It was really good fun. And anything from crawling around the floor in his office, designing a shaft by laying it out so we could stand there and look at it, or going and looking at TVMs that might be useful for underground exploration work. It went on and on. Design of a shaft boring machine that unfortunately never got built but never used because no one wanted to be the first. But the point is, all these things were done. They were thought about. They were tried. People had the guts to try those things, and it gets down to there's a whole area of where does innovation start and finish, or where does collaboration start and finish? What's innovation versus continuous improvement? Where it's this industry has just been so full of things. It's enough to keep any energetic person keenly engaged. That's for sure.
Well, you've got 45 years or 47, if I do the math right, with your first stint, or darn near, and you're still smiling. So that's
the reality of it is where we are in the industry at this point is I really believe we're on the cusp of really exciting things coming down the line. And it makes me wish I had another 20 years to stay energetically involved in it. And it's because when I broke into the industry, jumbles, underground, the drill jumbles that we use, The first ones that had only been on the scene for a matter of 3 or 4 or 5 years. They were only just starting. Scoops and underground haulage trucks and that whole concept of what sort of makes up modern underground mining now was just starting. But if you really think about it, the first jumbo, the first articulated jumbo that was used underground in 1968, 1969, we're really doing the same thing now. They're a whole lot bigger. They're a whole lot fancier. They got better drills. They got better steel. They got better everything on them. But we're still doing the same thing. And we're drilling and blasting the rounds, and we will continue to be drilling and blasting the rounds using nicer and nicer equipment as time goes on. But there are people like Komatsu with their MC51 and Sandvik with the MX650 and Epiroc with their mobile miner machines that they're developing, and others, CAT, and who are trying to figure out how to break hard rock using the mechanical excavation methods. And somebody's going to come up with that. Somebody's going to figure out how to not totally replace jumbos. I think that would that'd be a huge leap in a very short time if they did that. But somebody's going to figure out how to do this and apply it in certain situations and mines that will make a difference. And so that operations will become more continuous instead of cyclic like that we have now. And I want to see that. I want to see that, and I want to see other things come along, and because it's exciting, and to see how those things can be applied. One of the things that I realized probably 5 or 6 years into my career in mine construction and contracting is that if I had stayed at a singular mine, I would never have had the opportunity to see and experience the kind of things that I've seen and experienced in this business where we deal with so many different kinds of shaft sinking applications, different sizes, from little timber shafts to great big huge concrete line shafts to raise boring of all kinds, from little holes for stope slots to great big 20+ foot diameter holes for ventilation raises and hoisting shafts. Mine development of all the different techniques that have been developed over the years, construction and conveyors and pumping systems, and you name it. And the problems come from all over the world. They don't just come from one suburb or wherever. They're from all over, and that gives you the chance to see these things and meet the people. And it's the people that's the big deal. Totally ultimately, you can solve the technical challenge, but you also have to solve the people challenge through your dealings with your clients, your relationship, and how you administer work, training local workforces to do the work for you. It's all tremendous in its own way. Challenging, yes, but we have a saying here. And it's sort of one of the mantras of Redpath. I guess it's challenge is an important part of life. But Jim Redpath said and told me the two parts. The second part of that, which is one he didn't put in, but he wants everybody to remember, and it's something we all have to remember. It's okay to have challenges, but you have to have solutions. And so the second part of that is providing the solutions to the challenges is what makes life worthwhile. And if you look back on your career, when you faced a problem and a challenge, and it doesn't matter what kind of challenge it is, quite frankly, if you find a solution to that, a way to overcome it, and make yourself happy, make the people you're dealing with happy, that's what makes it all worthwhile. That's what you're trying to do, and so that's why I see all of the new innovation that's coming along in the industry, or it's not even necessarily in our industry. There's so much technical stuff that's out there that's coming, that's going to fall on us, and that we just have to find a way to use it and apply it in our business. And because I'm aware of so much stuff that's out there that's coming, that's why I want to be around to see it, and it's because it'll make a difference. And when you think about the new people coming into industry, if you're 18 or 20 years old and you're trying to figure out what the heck you're going to do for your life, this industry is going to be a place for it, because it's not about miners working underground. Yes, it is about miners working underground, and they're important. But our miners, we know how miners who do their mining but they're on surface, because they never go underground, because we got remotely operated equipment, and we've got the technology for that. But it's all the other skills which I think a lot of people don't understand that the mining needs, and our mining industry needs. And
I think that's a huge part.
It's so broad brush. That's actually one of the things that attracted me to mining in the first place, is when I looked at all the different subjects that I took when I was at mining school, and yes, there was the physics and the math, and those are important. But there was the geology and the mining classes and surveying classes and mineral processing and crystallography, and it just goes on. It had the potential to open so many different doors. That sure. And the people I graduated with, it demonstrated that, because we all went to into different areas of the business. Some worked for OEMs like Sandvik and Atlas Copco at the time, but now Epiroc.
Yep. Sure.
Some people went and worked in the tar sands. Some people worked in exploration. Some people went and became geologists. I can't believe it, but they did. But it's all the other. It's the administrative people. It's the IT people. It just goes on and on. The list never ends, quite frankly. And then we get all this new technology that's coming, and it's going to open up all kinds of new doors for people. So if you're 20 years old and you haven't figured out that the mining industry is a good thing, you've been doing that. Eyes closed, ears closed, and mouth closed. You haven't been asking questions, and you haven't been looking, because it's an exciting place to be.
I think, me too. I mean, I don't have 45 years like you do, but I've got 20. And over the course of 20, I mean, I've seen a lot and traveled a lot and talked to a lot of folks like yourself. You could be a graphic designer and find a career in mining.
Oh,
you
yes.
could be a copywriter and find a way. I mean, there's so many different things that other industries offer that mining has as well. And I think that's, a message that I want to continue to repeat and perpetuate, because it's true. And we need to attract and not only attract, but retain new talent.
Yes.
One of the things that I think we're both passionate about is collaboration and collaborative contracts. And you and I have had philosophical conversations, and frankly, we've had client-contractor conversations on this topic as well. So what is it about collaboration, or even to take it a step more specific, collaborative contracting that you feel like is a good thing? What about that style, or what about collaboration, gets you curious and gets you excited?
Well, collaboration is, in a way, can be an overused word. It's sort of like innovation. People
Sure.
use the word innovation for everything that came along. Well, in a way, I spoke about jumbos when they came to the industry. The jumbos coming to the industry, jumbo drills, where the real innovation. Ever since then, what we've been doing is continuous improvement, just making it better and better and better. Every once in a while, something changes that's radical. My first exposure to what you call collaboration actually happened early in my career. And it came through what you could consider an innovation in contract formats.
Okay.
Jim Redpath had heard about target price contracts that had been developed by the down in the U.S. and the whole idea of the target price contract is to be able to sit down in an open book basis, plan a project with the client, come up with an estimate that the client and the contractor agreed with, which was based on a schedule which they developed together, which they agreed to. And then you put together a contract based on working together to produce outcomes that were good for each other. And collaboration to me means you're going to work together, not as adversaries, but we're going to work together so that the contractor can achieve his goals and the owner can achieve their goals, and we're going to have fun while we're doing it.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah, and it's but it's really built on trust. You know, if we aren't prepared to be honest with each other, and we aren't prepared to be fair with each other, and we aren't going to respect each other, then it's going to be very hard to take a responsible approach to a collaborative relationship. So that was my first one. That was right at the start of my career, and later we were able to we were lucky enough to be able to work with a company called Lac Minerals, which we know where they ended up. That's Barrick now, but at the time, Lac Minerals allowed us to work with them on what was called an incentive-based cost reimbursable contract, which the target price contracts were based purely on cost performance, right? You're sharing in the overruns and the underruns within limits, but nevertheless, what it is. The incentive-based cost reimbursable contracts brought in a new era of what's important to the client. Is it safety performance? Is actual face performance? Is it equipment maintenance performance and life, that type of thing? It brought in other factors into the scheme that allowed you to work together cooperatively on those kind of things. And we've done a huge number of projects on the incentive-based cost reimbursable basis that have been active for years and they're still active. So it's those kind of opportunities, when done right, can be good for everyone, and you can have fun together. Another example of that was of a different type. Was working with, I won't say the company, but we had a master services agreement with them. And the master services agreement served to underpin the basis on which we were going to work together at the high level. And then we would end up, when there came a specific application for work, shaft job, mine development job, construction job, whatever, we would then have definitive agreements that could almost be on any basis, whether it could be, if it's small, easy to understand project, it might be fixed price or lump sum, or it might be cost reimbursable. It all depended on what we did. So those worked really well, especially it allowed the client to get us involved early in their project planning process, because they knew they had the master services agreement. So we through the early contractor involvement, we were able to help them do their early planning and do trade-off studies in assistance with it, and then help develop the schedules and cost estimates for that, and then ultimately, if that option was chosen, it would be tailored into a definitive contract. Early contractor involvement is key in my mind to all projects, and I just wish that contractors could get involved earlier, because the value that can be derived by our clients by collaborating with the contractors earlier, choosing your contracting partner, collaborating with them to help plan your work and pay the value that's in there just is hard for people to understand if they look at it from a very
so why do you think we've got away with that? I agree with you. I'm going to jump in. I agree with you. I think that early contractor involvement can be very beneficial for an owner. I also think that what you said earlier is really the crux of it. It's about having trust, and trust in both sides. The contractor and the owner have to trust each other. But as you've, I imagine, seen the evolution over your career, there's been a degradation in trust in holistically. Now there's still relationships that exist and trust that exists, but the emphasis or relying on trust seems to be less at the forefront than it used to. I don't know what your perspective is on that, but I'd be really interested in what you've seen over the course of time in that arena.
Yeah, we've gone through there's sort of cycles in that, right? And maybe some people felt they got too trusting during the heydays of 2010, 2011, 12, 13 kind of thing, and then it sort of went the other way, and we're going to get these we're going to get procurement specialists involved, and we're going to keep people away from, our senior people away from the decision process, all that kind of stuff. Okay, well, that works in a certain fashion, and people have been successful with it, and it's quite sort of traditional. But I still don't believe that it actually produces the end value to the client. Here's part of the here's part of the reason why. One of the things that there's a little thing that's important in many companies called net present value. Net present value is the problem with it is that although the senior executives understand it very well, and people experienced in the business and understand it very well, the mistake that has been occurring on many projects is that the people who are actually on the ground, who have to construct the mines, get these things built to get them into production, don't understand what the NPV on the project is and what that means to their project. For example, every day that a new mine is delayed getting into production means $100,000 or $1 million or whatever that happens to be in revenue or returns or even potential profits in some cases.
Big numbers though, yeah.
All right. So what we see happening time and time again is decisions being made that hold up the project, and it's for trifling things like a few $100s or a few $1,000s, and you just held up your project by a day or a week or even for an hour because of this, and the people on the ground who think they're doing the right thing don't understand that their argument over a few $100s or $1,000 or even $10,000 may just cost their company $1 million, right? Or $100,000 or whatever. But far far and away more than the issue at the time. The other aspect that we keep trying to drive home to people is that lowest price isn't necessarily the best value for them, especially if you don't get the project built on time, right? It's
Absolutely.
if you have someone, a contractor that ended up maybe telling you what you wanted to hear in terms of schedule when they didn't believe it was reality, or just simply they may have believed the schedule, but there was no way to achieve it. How do you measure the risk of that? I'm not sure that's well enough understood. But the one that it's the day-to-day operations part that really has bothered me the most over the years, because you know that the people, quite often the people making the decisions on the ground at the time don't understand the impact. And I've always tried to encourage our clients through our relationships to make sure their people understand that as well. Steering committees have played a big role in the collaboration department in my view. I've been privileged to be involved in steering committees on a few projects now, and an interesting thing has arisen out of that. Not only did it help to steer and direct the project and give our project managers and other senior people on site people that they could have ready access to get sorted out. The steering committee members from the client, we ended up becoming friends because we were working together for a common thing. It wasn't the client and the contractor. It was all of a sudden now we got this steering committee. Generally, it's 4 people, but and 2 from each side, and we became friends. And I've got some great examples of. I still run into people at the PDAC and CIM conventions and all, where we run steering committees years ago, and we're good friends and glad to meet each other and now what. So that doesn't mean that we were easy in dealing with each other. It's just that we were professional in dealing with each other, but we gave when our people needed help to make decisions, when they came to this is going to happen sometimes. It doesn't matter how good your contract is. Sometimes that's going to happen, and if the steering committee is working right, they can turn this into this. And they can also have influences on technical outcomes and all what. So I always encourage when we're getting into a really significant project, and it doesn't matter whether it's target price, incentive-based cost reimbursable, or fixed price. Doesn't matter. They should still have the steering committees to help nurture these major projects along. I'm not talking about having a steering committee for a $100,000 raise boring program. I'm talking about $100 million projects or whatever, and there's still lots of those out there.
Yeah, there are, but that's right, and that comes back to what you said before, is it's about people and relationships, and when you have that executive alignment, you can do a lot. I've seen it do a lot. I've seen it do things to the project's detriment, but more often than not, if you have a highly functioning steering committee, it's really a positive thing in my view.
I can't disagree, because I've just seen it work so many times. The other aspect that observation you can make, and it's come into play on a few projects that I've had, especially overseas, but it applies here in Canada and the US as well. When you try something different, let's say the world grew up on hard dollar contracts, fixed price contracts of some kind. Like, some people really enjoyed this, and thought they were doing the best job they could for their respective employer by doing this. But when you become a little more enlightened and you want to try something different, like where you have to work in cooperation, collaboration, alliance, there's so many different
whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
People need to be taught how to do that because it's not in their basic DNA, you know, to do that. And so we've, you know, you try and learn your lessons as you go along. And there's a fellow I work with here who I have great respect for. He keeps reminding us that, you know, there's lessons identified and then there's lessons learned, right? And if you don't apply the lessons that you identified and change something going forward, then you haven't done anything. You haven't learned the lesson. All you've done is managed to record it, but you haven't done anything. So one of the things that one of the lessons identified that we like to turn into a lessons learned is that when senior management wants to change things, they have this great idea that we're going to try these reimbursable contracts and we're going to work on a collaborative basis with the contractor and we're going to have them on a team and all this. You've got to train your people to do it as well. If your people who are looking after the administering the day-to-day contract don't understand what you're trying to get at, they don't understand how the relationship is going to work or how it's supposed to work, they will do what they always did.
So true.
All right. And so we thought, well, okay, we're going to overcome this. We're going to do training sessions at the beginning for everybody. We got all the contractors people together with the owners people. We're going to talk about all this work. And that's great. And everybody walks away and say, that's fantastic. 3 months later, they're all fighting again because they forgot. So you have to go and remind them, you know, and do it again. And you do it again until it sinks in. And it isn't necessarily a one-shot deal when you're trying to overcome years of this. This is not the way we do it.
Yeah, that's not the programming. Yeah, you got to reprogram a little bit.
Well, we had a situation on a project working with a major company in South America, and their senior people wanted to emulate the approach on projects that we were using in Indonesia and Mongolia, and so we took them we took some people on a tour to go, so they go witness, you know, how it was working and interview our clients there and see on the ground how the training programs were going and how the contract worked and what was being achieved. And they came back and said, boy, we got to do this. We got to do this in our minds down here. And so they said, okay, we're going to try it. We want to do this. The only thing is they failed to educate their own people about how that would work. So the senior people understood, but the people who had to make it happen didn't know. And we were asked to go and make a presentation to their procurements and contracts group about these things, which we did, and we spent hours going through it all. And afterwards, one of their top procurement people came to me and said, well, that was really interesting, but we don't do it that way here. So here we are, the senior people at the vice president level, just below, are we want to do this. The people who are in charge of making it happen say we don't do it this way. So, you know, it's thanks for the education, but we're not going to do that. So it was all kinds of stories like that, but collaboration involves the right choice of people. Steering committees really help, and obviously you have to have the right kind of contract as well. And the earlier you get the contractor involved, in my opinion, the better it is for the project. So there you go.
Well, no, I appreciate that. And that cultural piece is big. there is programming within different areas, different cultures. We all have our own programming, and some of us are programmed to, be adversarial in our relationships and the way that we execute. And no fault of anybody. Right. That's just, what they're accustomed to, what they're used to. So it does take repetition in order to get that new thought pattern ingrained into their programming. So I totally appreciate what you're saying and understand, and have seen it more times than I can remember. So I'm with you on that one.
Well, they, along with that it comes an understanding of exactly who owns the risk on a project. And what I mean by that is that the contractor has a certain work. Generally, there's a defined scope of work they have to do under certain conditions. And if everything can be really, really clearly defined, then life is great. Everybody knows exactly what they have to do. But the risk comes in when things change. And you've seen it hundreds or thousands of times. Things change. And in fact, that's standard.
Always.
That's standard for a mining project. It will never be exactly the same. So it won't be the same as what you thought when you laid out the scope, and put together your contract agreement. So in the end, some of this butting of heads that we get comes down to understanding who owns the risk of things. When things change, who's responsible? Well, the reality of it is the contractor can't be responsible for changes of ground because they don't own the mine. It's not their place. But if it's different than what they were told, well,
yeah, sure,
the client owns the risk. But you can go through lots of different examples of that. But one thing that collaborative contracting does is it eliminates the fighting over that. You're just, now you get together and we've got a problem. Things have changed. What are we going to do about it? How's that going to affect the budget? How's it going to affect the schedule? All those kind of things, so that we can do workarounds. Can we take different approaches to it? What can our collective brains put together on this, rather than just leaving it to the contractor to sort of, what a lot of companies don't realize, that they know a lot more about their mine and the situation than they imagine, and they shouldn't be afraid to accept that. They don't have to throw everything onto the contractor. Sometimes they've been studying the mine and conditions for years before the contractor ever gets involved. So use that, use that knowledge, that understanding, that history that the contractor doesn't necessarily have to
I think it's, yeah. I agreed. I think it's one of the lessons that I learned early in my career, and having worked for contractors and owners both, it's a different business model. What owners want at the end of the day is different than what a contractor wants, and the way that they're established. They're totally different business models, have different drivers. They all want the project to be on time, on budget, high quality. Both want that. But contractors have to think about their bench strength and their system and how they're going to use their people, whereas owners have to think about 20 years of operations, reclamation, and closure, and they're going to make their money over a long period of time. A contractor is going to get in there for a finite period of time and make their money. I mean, it's just a different paradigm altogether. Yeah. And that has been an invaluable lesson. But what I see so frequently is, particularly owners, I don't want to pick on owners, but they've got their horse blinders on, and they only appreciate their context and what's important to them, without thinking about, well, what does the contractor care about, and how can you incentivize them and drive their behavior and stuff like that. So it's the difference between owners and contractors that I see not fully appreciated at times.
There's an aspect. I'm going to respond to that, and I'll try to do it this way. Mining projects are all about transitions, and this is what I mean. When you go from exploration you have your early exploration work. That takes a certain mindset and certain kind of individuals to be involved in that. Then you move into you got something. Now you're going to move in and you're going to figure out, you're going to do your pre-feasibility and feasibility work and not what. And that needs a certain, it's not the exploration people can do that. It takes a different kind of mindset. So there's a transition into that. Then you're going to build the mine potentially. Now all of a sudden you're in a build mode, and there's a transition from the engineering phase to the build phase that requires a transition into that, and then ultimately from build into production, which again is another mindset. All of those involve risks, right? And generally the risks are the people, having the right people involved at the right time. And who can bring the right thing to bear. Quite often, it's during the pre-feasibility and feasibility stage that you lose your biggest opportunity to do it right.
Sure. Yeah.
And
before you start spending real money. Yeah.
So if you're going to do it right, that's the time to get the contractors involved in order to help you figure out how to do it right. Now, through the true collaboration phase, that works out really well for the owner and the contractor. It can be fair. There is this other aspect that has been used in the past, and Jim Redpath actually coined the phrase, at least in my mind. He may have learned it from someone else, but he told me, that's contractor abuse, all right? And what contractor abuse is engineering companies calling up contractors and saying, "Can you give me a price to sink a shaft?" Or tell, minimal information and poorly defined scope, but asking for mine development costs, asking for shaft sinking costs, raise boring costs, and all of the construction costs. Let's see what we can thumb suck today, that's abuse, because we're not in a position to do a professional job in what we're doing. But if you bring us into the team and you allow us to collaborate with you, we're going to open up our minds and we're going to help you solve your problems, and maybe we're going to be a clue as to a better clue as to how to better exploit this mine. So. Or exploit the ore body. It proves to be quite fun and challenging at the same time, but we'll find the solutions.
I like that your context always comes back to fun and having fun and having a good time. I think that's really, really significant and important too, right? We can't take ourselves so seriously that we take all the damn fun out of it. Why do that? Why do that? Well, I want to ask you, Dave, there's a question that I ask, everybody that comes to have a conversation with me, and it's a two-part question. So I'll let you answer it in whichever manner you want. But the question is this: where do you want the industry to be in 10 years? One, and then two, where do you think it's going to be? And you can take that in any order you want.
Yeah. Well, we're certainly going to be around. That's so true. That's important, and we're going to be more important and more important to the world than anybody really knows right now. I'm sure of that, because we see we're electrifying the world. We're going to need everything to do with that. We're not going away. And so on the basis that it's not going away, which is pretty positive, now we have to figure out where we're going to be. We're going to be a whole lot more technologically advanced. That's somebody is going to crack this nut about the mechanical excavation of rock. Somebody will crack that. So mines will continue to become safer, and mines will become more autonomous. But in saying that, it's going to open up a whole lot of opportunity for a different kind of skills in the industry. We're going to need people, and it's not just to replace guys like me. It's going to be, we have to replace all right across the board. We're going to have a hard time keeping up. And so I read just 2 weeks ago that one of the things that we're going to be hearing for the next 25 to 30 years is we don't have enough people. We can't get the skills, right? So what an opportunity for young people who want to get involved in an industry that's going to be more important to the world than it's ever been. To know that if I start into a career here, it doesn't matter what it is. If I'm going to zero in on the mining industry, whether I become an engineer of some type, or a geologist, or IT person, people are going to have to run all this fancy stuff, So we can't even guess at all the skills we're going to need. But when people look for a place where they're going to have certainty of a job, this is the place. And so that's what I see 10 years from now, or even 20 years from now. So, yeah. And like I said earlier, I wish I had 20 more years to be in it, because it's an exciting place to be.
Yeah, no, I get it. Your excitement, enthusiasm comes through, Dave, for sure. So I want to give you the opportunity. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about today that I didn't ask? Anything in your mind that you really wanted to cover that we didn't get to, or a question that I didn't ask? If not, that's okay. But I just want to make sure I give you a full opportunity to.
Well, yes, I do have one thing.
Good. Let's hear it.
My whole career has been about projects. Projects are an exciting place to be. It's an exciting space to be in.
I agree.
It's even more exciting because of the people that you get to work with. One of the things that I started off doing mine planning, but the mine planning turned into costing and scheduling, detailed scheduling, and building things on paper to begin with. Because the reality is, you got to build a mine on paper before you can actually build a mine. And if you can do a great job on building it on paper, and you can come up with the right execution plans, then building it will be a lot simpler. And so the mantra we have here is plan and plan again. I really believe it, and it's part of the fun of doing it. And it's don't forget your lessons identified and turn them into lessons learned. But every phase of a mining project is a project in itself, and it's important, and it has to be managed, and it has to be done right. So people just have to keep that in mind.
I agree. No, it's a salient point, and so true. So appreciate you sharing that. All right, Dave. Well, it's been a real pleasure. So before we sign off here, if people want to experience more of your enthusiasm and more of your lessons identified, and hopefully turn those into lessons learned, where can people find you?
They can. The easiest way would be with my email address, and it's dave.hansman@redpathmining.com. I'm sure you'll post it after.
And we'll link that up for sure.
Welcome anytime. So
awesome.
I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you.
Yeah, it's been great, Dave. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. See you again soon, I know.